So today we're going to be training on active shooter and immediate threat response. Okay. This is a very hot topic. Unfortunately, we see these active shooter situations far too often. I was just informed that there was one this morning, just hours ago, which I wasn't aware of. But it's a very important topic, so I really want you guys, if you have any questions, I will open it up at the end for any Q&A. But it's definitely something we need to pay attention to. So what the objectives for today's training are going to be is that by the end of this training, you're going to be able to identify some of the indicators of potentially violent behavior and why they should be reported. You're going to learn how to properly respond when someone displays violent behavior or if there's an immediate threat. In an active shooter situation, you'll learn how to respond properly involving that situation, and then also how to react appropriately when law enforcement arrives on scene. So one of the very important things is you need to know that people don't just snap overnight. Okay? People leave indicating behaviors. They demonstrate these behaviors. A lot of the times people are unaware or they choose not to get involved. So what we're going to train out today is I'm going to train you and empower you to be able to identify these behaviors. Okay? You are all the first line of defense for us here. Okay? Some of the indicating behaviors that could be potentially violent or threatening are depression, withdrawal, severe mood swings, resistance or overreaction to changes, whether it be policy, procedures, any explosive outbursts of anger or rage, behavior that may suggest paranoia. They start talking about how everybody's after me. Suicidal comments when they start talking about how they need to get things in order because, you know what, they're done here. Those are all things that we need to be aware of. Management needs to be aware of those situations. Any conversations in which you overhear them talking about domestic violence in the home, threats being made at work, you know, either against the associate or against coworkers, I'm going to go to your place of employment. Noticeable decrease in attention to appearance and hygiene. People who usually give up on life give up on everything, including their appearance. Okay. Talk of previous incidents of violence, praising individuals who commit violence. Okay, that's not normal, guys. We need to know about that. And any increased use of alcohol, illegal drugs. The way I see it is you work with people day to day with your coworkers. Managers that are here, leads that are here, you need to know who your people are, right? We know who they are day to day, and if there's a dramatic change in their behavior, if there's multiple indicators, we need to report it, okay? So what should you do if you hear suspect concerning or threatening behavior? Anybody?
Report it.
Report it. You need to take action. You need to take action. You need to alert management, human resources, any concerns regarding safety or security. Report them all immediately. Don't hold off and say, they're having a bad day, they'll get over it. Okay? We need to know about it. Because it's going to be easier for us to prevent the violence by stopping the small incidents as opposed to the aftermath of a major crisis. Okay? This is going to put things in perspective of what's happening in the world. If there is an immediate threat to you or your coworkers, you need to call 911. Okay? Call 911 immediately. And remember, they're going to ask you what your location is. So if you don't know the address to Sunrise Medical, you need to know it. You need to recite it. You need to know it because when you're calling, they're going to need to have that information. So again, I need you to take action. I need you to be alert and report any incidents that might be of an immediate threat. If someone's displaying violent behavior to you directly, remember to stay calm. Okay? You need to keep your arms low in a non-threatening position. If somebody comes at you and they're obviously angry, they're upset, you don't know what's going through their mind, but if you start like, I don't know what you're talking about, and making fists, those are threatening behaviors. More than likely, if you continue that, it's going to escalate and it'll probably draw out into a fight or something even more serious. So again, if anyone comes to you in a threatening behavior, stay calm, keep your distance. If they try to grab you, reach for you, get away, call for help, and when you're safe, call 911. I want you to remember, after you call 911, you still need to report it to management, okay? What is one of the ways that you can actually access and report an incident?
Red phone.
The red phone. I need you to know where those red phones are located. Okay. Every area has a red phone. We have multiple red phones throughout the facility. We have maps citing the red phones. I need you to take time to look at those maps and get familiar with the location of the red phones. As you're walking through your area, get familiar with the location of your red phone. People are not always at the same location. As you're walking through another department, get familiar with the area of the red phone. You don't know where you're going to be when you're going to need to access it, and it's better for you to prepare for it now. Sunrise Medical. So the actions that we take is what we're doing here. We're providing training. Okay? Our training, in addition to our training, we also have emergency evacuation plans. Okay? We're all familiar with our emergency evacuation plan. We also have maps, as I mentioned. We've got maps posted at exits. There's one over on door 43. I really need you to take the time and get familiar with those maps. On lockdown situations, we're also going to create plans for that, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. But we have a zero tolerance policy toward workplace violence against or by any of our associates. What that means is that all claims of workplace violence or threats will be investigated and actions will be taken according to the outcome of the investigation. We cannot apply those policies unless we know about the problem. Again, that's where you guys come into play. You're our first line of defense. In order for us to help somebody and eliminate threats, we need to know about it. So during the past few years, there's been an alarming increase in the number of workplace violence incidents. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, we see a lot of them at schools too. And the reason that we're going through this training is because we have to take into consideration that it can happen here. It can happen to you. It can happen when you're at a restaurant with your family, or it could happen here at Sunrise Medical. And you need to be prepared for that situation. According to Department of Homeland Security, an active shooter is an individual actively engaged in killing, attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. In most cases, the active shooter uses firearms and there's no pattern or method to their selection of victims. They go in, they start shooting, and they don't care who it is, where it is, everybody's gone. The active shooter situations are unpredictable and they happen quickly. In a matter of 4 to 5 minutes, they're done. Typically, it takes law enforcement to be deployed, enter the situation to mitigate the shooter. And it usually ends by law enforcement, suicide, or other forms of intervention. 9 out of 10 shooters are suicidal. Some of the common motives will include anger, revenge, ideology, but in most cases there really is no pattern or method to their selection of victims. Again, once they've made up in their mind that they're going to carry out this agenda, they go in and they carry it out. Shootings can also be the result of an individual's untreated mental illness. Okay? So when we're talking about anger, some of the motives they have behind their anger or their revenge could be bullying, humiliation, rejection, broken relationships, marriages. There's a lot of reasons behind what could cause their anger, their revenge, or their beliefs. Okay? But those are some of the statistics that have come from investigations of active shooter situations. So what is your role? Okay, what's your responsibility? And again, I want to emphasize that everyone here has a responsibility. It is your responsibility to listen for indicators in others' communication and their speech. What are they talking about? Are they talking about any of those behaviors that we reviewed? Suicidal, comments, violence, guns, weapons? If so, we need to know about it. Watch for indicators in their emails, their social media posts, their behaviors. Again, if they're talking about domestic violence situations, if you're aware that there was an incident with the partner out in the parking lot, we need to know about those situations. You're much more familiar with your coworkers day in, day out than I would be. So if your coworker is a normal, from a day in, day out, normally quiet, calm, cool, collected, and all of a sudden you start to see this rage and difference in behavior, we need to question that. We need to question that and bring that forward to management. So a lot of the times what happens, and these are statistics that come from active shooter investigations. They have found that the majority of the shooting events were preventable. Preventable because people were aware. Because these shooters talked about it. They talked about their anger. They talked about the weapons. They talked about even carrying out the event. There were people, witnesses to the fact that they saw them with the guns. But people were afraid of either becoming a target, retaliation. They're having a bad day. They're blowing off some steam. They won't go through with it. I don't want to get involved. Or they really are a good person. So again, I need you guys to do your job, fulfill your role, and make sure that we are talking about anything that is concerning, anything that is threatening, any of those behaviors that were discussed, we need to know about it. So why should you tell? Well, first of all, it gives us the opportunity to intervene. It gives us the opportunity to provide help to them. We have an employee assistance program. That employee assistance program can provide help to individuals. If they're, whatever it is they're going through. Everyone reacts differently to trouble, to, depression. Everyone reacts differently, and we could possibly help this individual, but unless we're aware of it, we can't take that action. So possibly we could prevent an incident from happening. Who should we tell? If you notice any of those indicating behaviors, you can tell any member of management, you can tell human resources, because we will take action. If you wish to maintain anonymous, because I know a lot of people truly do, I don't want to get involved. But I'm telling you right now, you could be saving a lot of lives if you do. If you want to remain anonymous, which is your choice, I would encourage you, okay, you have a hotline to call. There's also an email address for you to send the information. This is a third party that receives the information. They don't forward any IP address to us or any identifying information. So, if you're going to be anonymous about it, be detailed. I need to know the person's name, last name, the area they work in, who do they report to, what are some of the concerns that they've exhibited that you want to report? Was it actions? Was it behavior? Was it conversations? We need to know all of that detailed information, because remember, I don't have anybody to call back and say, hey, I need some more info. So please be as detailed as possible so we have enough information to the point where we're talking to the right people. So here we start talking about, how to respond and what you would do. I need you today, right now, to change your mindset and start thinking about If an active shooter came right through these doors, what would you do? You need to start looking around the room. You need to start being aware of your surroundings. You need to know where your nearest and safest exits are located. That is the mindset that you have to have. Sunrise Medical, as far as our notification process, should we have an active shooter situation, is we will notify via the radio, two-way notification. You're going to hear a call that goes out and says active shooter, shots fired, in HR. That's going to trigger notification. One of the things I want to make very clear to everybody in this room is that when I say shots fired in HR, does not mean that that shooter is going to remain in HR. That shooter is going to move, and they're going to move quickly. And I'm not going to be able to predict which direction they're going in. So what this is it's going to alert you. Alert you to now you have to pay attention to where these shots are coming from. Your goal is to move away from the shots fired. You run. If you have the opportunity to escape, that's your first priority. Okay? Hide or fight, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But again, those shooters are going to move. They don't stay in one place. And if you can't hear the shots, more than likely you're going to hear the chaos, because there's going to be panic. There may be screaming. You want to stay away from that. So that means escape at whatever means possible to you. Create a distance between you and that shooter. If that means going into neighboring facilities, then that's what you'll do. You need to develop plans before this emergency occurs, and that's where I emphasize. You have to adopt a survival mindset. Okay, when you leave here today, I want you to start thinking about, what am I going to do if I have an active shooter in my area? I want you to start looking around. Which door am I going to run through? And remember, I do not have the answer. We don't have a written process that you can follow that's going to guarantee your survival. That's going to be up to you and the actions that you take. But I can tell you that by preparing now, your chances of survival are greater. Statistically speaking, one of the things that they have found after active shooter situations is when they interviewed those who survived the incident, one of the questions they asked is, how did you get through it? The response was, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get home to my family. That's what kept them going. Because I'll tell you right now that fear is not going to help you through that situation. You have to have the right mindset. So in an active shooter emergency, you need to trust your instincts. You need to take responsibility for your own safety and your own survival. It's going to be your decision whether you can run, hide, or take action, but it has to be based on the most reasonable way to protect your own life. Okay? You are all familiar with what your physical capabilities are. I'm going to tell you right now, I am not a runner. If I need to run to save my life in an open area, I'm going to think twice about it. Maybe my best bet is to take cover, lock myself down. That's me. Because that's based on my personal judgment of my capabilities. Everybody has different capabilities. You need to know what they are, and you need to trust your instincts on that. If you can get out without exposing yourself, that's your goal. That's your priority. Okay? You need to do that as quickly as possible. And that is, again, where here, right now, you need to start thinking about what actions you're going to take. Because you're not going to have time to think about what I need to do. Remember, 3 to 4 minutes, those incidents are over. So your goal is to achieve distance between you and that shooter, because as long as you're not crossing paths with that shooter, that means you're safe. So you get away as far as you can. Your best bet is getting away by foot. Go into the neighboring facilities, leave the premises. Okay? What we don't want you to do is start accessing cars, because that's going to create problems. Okay? And I'll be honest with you, I don't think you'll even have time for that, because things are gonna happen so fast. But what you need to do is, you need to be familiar with the shooter's location, okay? Your best bet is listening for shots fired, listening for that chaos, and that's gonna move. If you're confident you can safely escape, that's what you wanna do. And you need to, again, have a plan of escape. Go back to your area, whether you're in an office or you're out on the production or warehouse floor, you need to go back and you guys need to start talking as a group. Okay, what actions am I gonna take? Where's my plan of action? Is it gonna be a solo plan? Is it gonna be a group plan? You need to start talking about that. If you can and need to, you can employ cover and concealment. Cover. That is a physical barrier between you and the shooter that will slow or stop a bullet, okay? Some examples will be a door, a building wall, a vehicle, structure, okay? You could take cover, protect yourself from the bullet. If there is no cover, then your best bet is gonna be to take concealment. Concealment's only gonna hide you, it's not gonna protect you from bullets. If I hide behind this poster here, it's not gonna stop the bullets. But it may hide me away from that shooter, and I would hope that if he walks through here, he misses me altogether. The one thing you don't wanna do is you don't wanna stand in plain sight. So you have to take action. It's up to you what action that's gonna be. If you leave, you need to remember, you have to leave your belongings behind. Okay, don't worry about your purse. Don't worry about any of those belongings. You leave all of that behind. As you leave, as you escape, you need to warn your assigned buddy. Everybody has a buddy according to our emergency evacuation plan. If not, you need to get one. We're all aware that we do have associates with disabilities. We have deaf associates. They're not going to have an idea what's going on. It is up to us, and that is the reason why it's so important that we have this buddy rule in place. You need to make sure you warn them of the situation and take them with you. Okay? Don't move victims. Not only will this slow you down, but it can also put those victims at greater harm. By moving them, you might create more harm to them. You need to prevent individuals from entering an area where the active shooter may be. So as you're leaving doors, if you see people walking towards doors, you need to tell them, active shooter, run. And don't stop until you're safely away from the area. Once you're safe, then what we ask you to do is call 911 and report it. So when you're calling 911, they're going to be asking questions. There's information that they're going to need. Now, at this point, I want you to put yourself in law enforcement's shoes, okay? If they're going to come in here, right, to help us with the situation, the more information they're aware of, okay, the safer it's going to be for them to address, whether it's number of law enforcement that's going to be here, you know, ambulances, all of that goes into consideration. We need to provide the location of the shooter. We need to include the building name, the floor level, and the door numbers. We're all familiar that the doors have numbers. Those numbers are on the inside and the outside. Okay? Briefly describe the nature of the incident, what's happening. Active shooter, there's shots fired. Provide the suspect's physical description, if you can. Give a weapon description, relay how many weapons they have, if you can. Provide them with an appropriate number of potential victims, if you have that information. And then you also have to provide your personal information, including your name and your location. You stop and you think about the situation. You're in a panic, they're shooting, they're screaming. You might not even be able to react, but that is why we're doing this training right now, because you need to prepare yourself mentally for it. I'm challenging you to start reciting this information. If you don't know the address to the facility, you need to learn it. Okay? These are standard questions that they'll be asking. Run those through your mind. Learn them. Provide that information for them when they're on the phone. The more we can provide them with, the better equipped they are to come in and help us. If safe evacuation is not possible, we need to find a place to hide where the active shooter is less likely to find us. So that means stay out of view until it's safe. And you have to be very careful, because this is where you trust your instincts. If you feel, and it could be possible, that that shooter is trying to lure you out of your location, you might hear them saying, hey, everything's good, come on out. If it doesn't feel right in your gut, stay where you're at. Once everything is all clear, we will have law enforcement that will come through and do a sweep. Use barricades. If you're hiding, try to provide protection for yourself if shots are fired in your direction. So you could create barricades that can be difficult, that shots can penetrate, by using filing cabinets. Those of you who are in offices, bookshelves, out on the floor, there's different equipment that you can, take cover under, concealment under. Your goal again is to evacuate, escape, but if you can't, try to barricade yourself. Don't trap yourself or restrict your options for movement. Lock the doors behind you. Get behind a locked door, block it with anything that you have. Here's another thing for you guys to think about, those of you that are in offices. If it came down to a situation and you had no other place but to stay in your office, okay, what actions are you going to take? What are you going to use to block that office door? Do we need to rearrange the office? Do we need to put a file cabinet next to it? Maybe a table, chair? You guys need to start walking through these situations in your mind. Cover windows. Okay, so you want to make sure you cover the windows. Why? Because you don't want the shooter to see inside. Turn off your computers. Silence your cell phones. Turn off the lights. And when it's safe, use your cell phone to make the call to 911. So as far as lockdown, similar to hiding out, when there's a lockdown, usually it's going to be because there's a shooter or shooters on the outside wreaking havoc. In this case, what we want you to do is proceed to a room that can be locked, close and lock all the doors and windows, turn off all the lights, have everyone silence their cell phones, get everyone down on the floor where no one's visible from the outside room, and then again, without alerting the attackers, call 911, give the officers your location and any details that you have about the situation and how it's unfolding. Remain in place until a police officer gives the all clear. So when it comes down to taking action, if all else fails, and if you're confronted directly with the shooter, and only as a last resort, if your life is in danger, take action. So what does that mean? It means that you're going to try to disrupt them, you're going to try to distract them, you're going to try to incapacitate them by any means possible. This is a life or death situation. You need to think about, and you need to have a mindset right now, are you going to survive or are you going to be a casualty? You need to act aggressively as possible to subdue the attacker. And again, you're either going to act alone or you're going to act as a team. You could swarm them. Yell for distraction, cause chaos, anything that you can do to attempt to confuse the shooter. Negotiating is also an alternative. But negotiating rarely works with shooters who are not in the right state of mind. However, I want to share with you, and you may have seen that there was a video that went viral, where there was a student who was disarmed by a teacher, and by negotiating, talking to him, he was able to disarm the student, and you could see it in the video where they basically could take the gun away from him and then he just holds it. Remember to commit to your actions 100%. You need to fight for your life with whatever actions you choose to take. Making it difficult for the shooter to buy time okay? If you make it difficult for the shooter, distracting them, taking action, it's gonna buy law enforcement some time, and it's possibly gonna save some lives. But you need to remember that these actions should be used as a last resort when any of the other methods are not possible. And here, just to show you, even a fire extinguisher can become a weapon. Again, go back to your office, go back to your work area, and start thinking about last resort. If I can't get away, and if my life is in danger, what actions am I going to take? What weapons do I have available to me? You have a lot of weapons. A lot of weapons. One of the things is that you need to know now, mentally prepare yourself what actions you're going to take. Because in the heat of that moment, there's going to be a lot of chaos. So now we're going to talk about how to respond when law enforcement arrives on the scene. One of the things you need to do is you need to remain calm and follow their instructions. Keep in mind that when they come on site, every single one of us in this room is a threat. They don't know who the active shooter is. They're here to subdue that active shooter. They're not here to provide aid to us, not the first responders. They're here to subdue the active shooter. Okay? So you need to immediately raise your hands, spread your fingers. Again, they're looking at us as a threat. They don't know who we are. Spread the fingers, keep hands visible at all times, avoid making quick movements because you could be a threat. Avoid pointing, screaming, or yelling. Remember, they're here to help us. If we're screaming, yelling, we're creating chaos and confusion for them. Don't stop and ask them for help because, like I said, they're here to subdue the active shooter. They're not here to help us, not the first responders. Once they evacuate you and you reach a safe location or assembly point, you need to be cooperative. You need to share information with investigators. Do not leave the safe location or the assembly area until law enforcement has instructed you to do so. For your safety, I cannot stress enough. Do not get upset. Do not argue, because they're going to question you. Some of the behaviors that you can expect from them is they're going to come in, they're going to be, they're going to have weapons, and they're going to be shouting orders. They're going to say, get down, stay down, don't move, show me your hands. Is it possible that they're going to get physical and say, push you down? Yes. Everyone here is a threat. Stay calm, hands, fingers shown at all times. Don't resist even if you're handcuffed or searched. That's all part of their protocol. So in summary, I want to share with you, we have a zero tolerance policy, but again, we cannot implement that policy unless we're aware of any issues that are out on the floor. So please, I need you to do your part. You're our first line of defense. Do your part and allow us to do ours. Be aware and report all of the incidents. In an active shooter situation, remember that your goal is to run and to escape, whatever it takes. When that adrenaline rush comes through, I think we're all capable of a lot of things, but you're to get out of the facility, out of the area. If not, then you hide, and as a last resort, you fight. So again, move away from the danger, be out of the aggressor's view and path, don't make noise. If you have to fight, improvise your weapons and commit 100%. So what I'd like to do right now is give you guys a little knowledge check with the true or false. Number one, knowing how to react during a shooting event can help you keep calm in case it happens. Number two, in general, your best option when dealing with an active shooter inside your building is to flee to safety. True. 3, when law enforcement arrives, it's their first job to help you flee the scene. That is false. Remember, they're here to subdue the shooter. They're not here to render help to us, not the first responders. Active shooters will often display violent indicators or warning signs before they act out their emotional problems. That is true. Number 5, confronting the shooter with physical action should be your first choice when reacting. False. Again, that should be, as a last resort, that should be your last choice, and that's when your life is in immediate danger. But if it comes down to it, you need to commit 100% because it's a life or death situation. We don't have the answer. We don't have a written process that's gonna guarantee your survival. As I mentioned before, the better prepared you are, the better your chances are of survival. But that starts with you. That starts with you now having the mindset that you're gonna be a survivor. Start talking, thinking about your plan of escape, because you don't know when it can happen, but it can happen. It can happen here, it can happen at Walmart, it can happen at a restaurant, it can happen anywhere.